Super awesome. Russian TV is super bullish on Bitcoin and is talking about a Sputnik moment, meaning that the Bitcoin race has now begun. Max Keiser was invited here on RTTV, and we're checking out the super bullish statements. It's about the fact that Bitcoin is here to win now. Here, even the Bitcoin Sputnik explosion is confirmed on TV. What is being talked about here is that we already have many different forms of money, but all forms of money were suboptimal. Bitcoin is perfect money for the first time here, and it's crazy that something like this is now even appearing on public television. I won't beat around the bush too much. Just watch these blatant statements here on Russian TV by Max Keiser. And just so you don't wonder, this whole thing is AI translated into German.
Jerry Wall, thanks for having me here. Good to see you. So, Bitcoin fulfills the promise that people have been searching for in money since the beginning of time, and that is perfect money. And perfect money allows people to travel effortlessly through time and space and reach their full potential. And for many years, we used different pebbles and stones, and then gold was popular for thousands of years. Bitcoin emerged as perfect money. Now, Bitcoin is superior to fiat, collectibles, stocks, and bonds. Trillions are moving to Bitcoin. And now we're seeing the realization that Bitcoin, when you compare it to other stores of value like fiat money, chattel art, or any kind of store of value, is superior to even the stock market or the bond market. And now we're seeing trillions of dollars leaving these other stores of value and finding their way to Bitcoin. And what's really interesting right now is that we've truly entered a new Sputnik moment as different nations are competing to build up the largest Bitcoin reserves they can. Because nations are beginning to understand that this is the new prima franca of the 21st century. The entire global economy is being rebuilt on Bitcoin, which is truly perfect money. In the case of Russia and the recent comments from the Kremlin, they seem ready to jump into the race for Bitcoin now. The United States, under the new administration of Donald Trump, has said they want to buy 1 million Bitcoin. 2001. There's Cynthia Lummis, a senator from Wyoming, saying they want to sell their gold, 8,000 tons of gold, and buy Bitcoin. There are other countries making the decision to buy Bitcoin. Different states in the United States are choosing to buy and hold Bitcoin. And that will really shape the economy in the 21st century, defining the century. Because at the end of the day, when you have something like Bitcoin that's better than anything else, as a store of value, the market is going to recognize that, and you're starting to see people sell off other assets and invest in Bitcoin.
So there were some really exciting things in there. First of all, of course, here's the Sputnik moment. What that means is that the competition back then in space kicked off to send the first satellite into orbit. And so Max Keiser is comparing it now, saying that everyone basically wants to be the first nation to go all in on Bitcoin. I mean, we already have El Salvador, which has, let's say, a smaller Bitcoin reserve, or other small countries that also have little holdings, like Bhutan or something like that. But it's not comparable when he talks about the 1 million Bitcoin that the US wants to buy. And he's also clearly discussing this, and maybe that's why he's being invited to Russia now, as it seems like Russia is opening up to Bitcoin. But it is not comparable when he talks about the 1 million Bitcoin that the USA wants to buy. And he's also talking about this very clearly, and maybe that's why he's being invited to Russia now, as it seems like Russia is opening up to Bitcoin. Putin has already said that Bitcoin can't be stopped. The finance minister of Russia just said again, hey, we're already using Bitcoin for international trade. And this is a very, very exciting geopolitical story that's unfolding right now. At the same time, Max Keiser keeps emphasizing that the monetary premium is being pulled out of other asset bubbles and allocated into Bitcoin. So people are going to realize that in 2001, Bitcoin is better than bonds, Bitcoin is better than gold, Bitcoin is better than stocks, and Bitcoin is better than real estate. And that's also what's really putting off a lot of, let's say, alternative investors or even traditional investors, especially the story about gold, that the gold bugs are getting worried because Cynthia Lummis wants to sell the gold reserves in the US and put it all into Bitcoin. The important takeaway is the current dip we're experiencing isn't a crash, just a pullback. Some call it a crash. When Bitcoin drops 5%, they say Bitcoin crashed. We're not rising above the US dollar now, it's more like a fake out. So don't be swayed by short-term volatility, thinking Bitcoin crashed and is dipping. We were at a level now back in the ER range, or something like that. So you really shouldn't let yourself be impressed by the short-term volatility, thinking, okay, Bitcoin has crashed now, and it's currently dipping back down. We were already at a certain level, and now we're somehow back in the ER range or something like that. Max Keiser makes it very clear that you really have to look at the big picture in the long term and focus on the fundamentals. What are the fundamentals of Bitcoin? And the fundamentals of Bitcoin are that it's superior money, that it's perfect money, as Max Keiser says, because we don't have all the downsides, like with gold, for example, with transportation issues, or with fiat money, which can be printed infinitely. Bitcoin combines the best of the fiat world and the gold world, and it even creates an absolute limit in the form of a mathematical computer code that halves every 4 years, creating absolute scarcity through the halving. With gold, the transportation issues, or with fiat money, which can be expanded infinitely. Bitcoin combines the best of the fiat world and the gold world, and it even creates an absolute limit in the form of a mathematical computer code that halves every 4 years, generating absolute scarcity through the halving. And Larry Lepard, who has just published a new book, is really a fantastic Bitcoin analyst. He used to be a gold bug and is now shifting more and more towards Bitcoin. In 2001, he added something very, very interesting to the conversation.
The beauty of Bitcoin is that by opting out of the system, you're defunding their system. And now you're joining the sound money team. So you can actually benefit from switching to the system while you're fighting against it. And it actually reminds me of a page in your book where you say something very powerful that resonated with me as well. 2001. You say there's a form of money that's fixed in quantity. It's literally a once-in-a-lifetime event in human history. Could you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, so Saylor said that recently, and then Luke Groman mentioned it on Twitter the other day. You know, that's the most inelastic good in the world. And let me explain what I mean by that. When the price of a commodity goes up, the suppliers of that commodity will change their behavior and produce more of it to bring the price down, balancing supply and demand. So as an example, if the price of gold were to double tomorrow, well, then we would drill for more gold, find it, and produce it. When the price of oil goes up, then marginal oil fields become profitable, and oil producers will drill them and produce more oil. Think about it. The price of supply goes up, the supply increases. That's the law of most commodities, okay? With Bitcoin, there's a fixed supply of 21 million, unique. No matter what happens with the price, the supply stays constant. 2001. The supply is just the supply, period. It's fixed, it's algorithmic, it has every 4 years in terms of new issuance. We've never seen anything like this before, ever. There has never been a form of money that could not be diluted. I mean, even gold, which used to be the most solid form of money, its supply grows by 1.7% a year. Multiply that by 55 years, and you've doubled the amount of gold on the Earth's surface. But with Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million. So that's the result. It's one of a kind in human history. It's a paradigm shift. I mean, people couldn't fly, and then suddenly people could fly. It's kind of a transformation.
And Larry Lepard doesn't see this as the Sputnik moment. Instead, Larry Lepard sees Bitcoin as the moment, when humanity started to lift off the ground and fly into space or into the sky or something like that. In any case, we now have a new dimension. That is, what we have always done for a long time is that we have basically made the same mistakes over and over again, but then called them something different. Then we had the D-Mark, the Euro, the Reichsmark. Always different new currencies, but the underlying issue was always the same. We had a central authority, a central money printer, a central money creator. And Bitcoin is now solving this problem because we are entering a new dimension where we have simply designed money in such a way that there is no longer a central point of attack. And that's what's really special about Bitcoin, what sets it apart from all other assets, from all other forms of money. What's also worth mentioning is the unique thing about Bitcoin, for example, when we want to make a change here, like people in Germany who are now gluing themselves to the streets because they feel a lack of self-efficacy, because they just can't express anything anymore, because they feel like they have no power in the system. Want to make a change here, for example. People in Germany are now sometimes stuck to the streets because they simply lack self-efficacy, because they simply can't express themselves anymore, because they somehow no longer have any power in the system. So they're gluing themselves to the streets out of desperation because they can't think of anything better to do. But no, we don't need to glue ourselves to the streets. All we really need to do to create real change is to take the money away from the state. And you can easily do that in the form of Bitcoin. Of course, you can also emigrate physically. For example, I left Germany. You can do it, but you don't have to, whatever, it's all free anyway. I mean, are there other reasons why I left Germany? Because of the sun here, because of the palm trees, the coconuts, the bananas, the watermelons. the papayas, and so much more. And of course, the good vibes here in El Salvador. But in principle, you just have to choose a better form of money. And then something really, really special happens. Suddenly, the state apparatus starts to wobble because it realizes, oh crap, if all the high achievers, all the people with money, all the folks running businesses suddenly stop supporting the US dollar, stop supporting the euro, then we can't keep our Ponzi scheme going anymore. Because the Ponzi scheme only works as long as there are enough people participating. That means you always need a relatively large portion of the population to participate in this whole game. And if most people stop participating, then the whole game doesn't work anymore. It's kind of like the shepherds can only control the sheep as long as the sheep let themselves be controlled. And if most people stop participating, the whole game won't work anymore. That may well be the case. The sheep herders can only control the sheep as long as the sheep allow themselves to be controlled. If all the sheep suddenly stand up and say, hey, I don't have to stay in this pen, and that dog scaring me is just an illusion, I can just take off to the left and run away or something. No one is really stopping me from doing that. If the sheep allow themselves to be oppressed, then the shepherds can do whatever they want with the sheep. If sheep act like cats, you can break free from this matrix. It's a mental switch, a shift in perspective, and it's the same with Bitcoin. It's just a shift in perspective. Like Larry Lepard says, where you suddenly look at the whole story from above when you can take off and humanity has learned to fly. And it's the same with Bitcoin. I mean, with Bitcoin, you can't just float around in the air, but it's meant symbolically because suddenly you have a different perspective on the world. Suddenly you no longer see the world from a victim perspective, but suddenly you see the world from a place of great gratitude, from a huge potential, from an infinite potential that Bitcoin now gives you the opportunity to save, to build a solid life, and you have the perfect tool here. As Max Keiser says, you have perfect money here, and that is simply the game changer that can simply project a completely different economy here and also build a completely different society here. And if you want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll link you below to Bitcoin 2021, the easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. I'm signing off. Let the customers know what you think about the Sputnik moment here. Until then, peace out.